You're listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Theresa Lear Levine. You're already enough, but if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching, creating, and aligning with the person you feel called to be, and creating greater calm, clarity, and confidence in your life, as well as room for pleasure and expansion. Through amazing stories, conversations, and offerings, this podcast is here to inspire and support you. Get ready to release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our consciousness and vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Becoming More Me. I'm really pleased to introduce you to my guest today, Katie DePaola Silverman. Katie is an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, and the founder of Inner Glow Circle, which is a company dedicated to helping women become professional, certified life coaches and build profitable personal brands. And it's grown into a globally recognized professional training and certification program with nearly 600 students. Through Inner Glow Circle, Katie built the first all-women, all-online, ICF-accredited coach training course, helping thousands of women start businesses of their own. And in her best-selling book, At Least You Look Good, Learning to Glow Through What You Go Through, Katie shares her most vulnerable and often funny reflections on how to deal with the hardest parts of life, and her best advice for people who want to glow through what they go through. Katie is a fierce mental health advocate who built her business amidst challenging times, growing from a self-funded startup to $1 million business. She's been featured in Time, Entrepreneur, and Forbes, as well as over 50 podcasts. She also serves on the board of Bo's Effort, a foundation in memory of her late brother, Bo. I'm so glad you're here today, Katie. Thanks for joining me.
Aw, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to just start by having you share a little bit about who you are outside of all that, who you spend your time with, who you love, what your hobbies are outside of personal development and coaching, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's like a good first date question. So I like that. Um, well, I am very, very family focused. So we spend a lot of time with both of our families, my husband and I, and we're very committed to building a family of our own, which I was sharing with you earlier. So family is really important to me. And then I have a pretty tight-knit group of friends. I've obviously had my business partner live for, almost 10 years now. We've been working together. And then, I love to play tennis. I'm a big tennis player. That's sort of how my husband and I first connected. So we play pretty competitively against each other. I'm just learning how to golf, despite my thinking it's a boring sport. It seems to be something that my husband's really into and a lot of our family's into. So I'm swallowing my pride there. I really love.
As you're learning it, is it becoming less boring?
Well, I actually played in a golf tournament, which is very funny. I played in a golf tournament last week at Queenstown, which is across.
That was the one for the fundraiser for your late brother, right?
No. So
Okay.
I run the fundraiser, I run the day of for him. So I am not available to play golf on that day.
Gotcha.
But I was asked to plan another tournament for the hospital that we give a lot of our funds to, that we do a lot of fundraising for. And, for another nonprofit that also raises funds for them. This was for suicide awareness.
Okay.
And so I was asked to play in this tournament. I do not play golf. I've never really played golf. I think I took a lesson once and basically threw the club and was I'm not doing this. But I made my husband the week before take me to just hit balls, and I got a couple up off the ground. So I was okay, I won't completely humiliate myself. I was playing with a team of women who were just out to have fun. And there was one other person that was definitely on my level. And we were just kind of enjoying the day. And I was like, oh, I think I get this. It's like you're driving around a golf cart. So it's like adult bumper cars, basically. And then it's like course to course with like different challenges. So it's like an obstacle course. It's, hopefully it's beautiful outside. Like the courses are usually beautiful. And I was like, I think I get it, but I can't fully get past like it's a 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour day every
Right.
weekend. Like to me, I have so many other things to do.
Yeah, the
But
length
maybe
of
that's
time
part of
gets
my
me too.
yeah, but maybe that's part of my problem. Maybe I need to be just like, all those
But if I
dudes. I feel
could
like it's
do all of my networking for the week in that time frame, it probably would be a nicer way to do it than
right,
just like
exactly.
on Zoom or whatever, like I normally do. But I don't feel like I am in the local presence of most of the people that I do my networking with. So
Right.
is there like virtual golf?
I know we need like a coaching industry golf tournament or something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I've never really been a golfer either, but those rare occasions that I've tried it, I'm like kind of like you, like I think I get it, but yeah, it just doesn't really fit into my life as a mom of four boys and all the other things going on. So, but I think
Yeah,
that's also why so many men love it because it gets them out of all that stuff for
right,
half a day at least. So,
right.
for better or worse. But what else?
Yeah.
What else do you enjoy doing in your life?
I like hiking. I like, being outside. I enjoy traveling, although as I get older, like the schleppiness of traveling is like I feel like I'm becoming a little bit more of a homebody and I like to be home with,
Mhm.
all my things that give me comfort. I really enjoy painting. I've been painting a lot over the past couple
Neat.
months.
What kind of paint do you like?
I mostly use acrylics
Okay.
and I like to paint with texture.
Hmm.
So I use different tools to do that. So yeah, I'm very like
Fun.
crafty and artistic, and I've
Me
been really
too.
enjoying. So we moved into a new house in February, and I've been really enjoying decorating and putting it together, but
Yeah.
it's also been stressing me out. So
Yeah, well, I know. And so I was on Katie's podcast, and I don't know when that one's going to release, but at some point you can see me on there, and she's here now. And we did a private session together where we were talking about some of this stress. So for those of you that already have my private sessions resource, it's added in there. And if you don't, you just go to theprivatesessions.com and grab it. But yeah, we were talking about this stress, and I could totally relate to the home stress because okay, we moved in 2020, so like way longer ago than you, but still feels relatively new, especially with, I mean, life is busy and it's hard to find
yeah,
time to like, I really enjoy decorating and I don't know if it's perfectionism or if it's just like the feeling of getting it wrong or whatever, but it's like I don't want to do it until I know I really am going to like the outcome. So we have a lot of rooms that are still half decorated or where like we just like stuck a picture on the wall where the last owners already had a hook and it's not really the best location, but it's like I don't
yeah.
really want it yet. So yeah, it's a hot mess over here too, but I just don't know what the vision is quite yet. And I still feel like
Honestly,
we
that
can't
makes
have
me
nice
feel
things.
better.
We can't have nice things. We have four boys that like ruin everything. So I'm like, maybe if I just procrastinate for like another 10 years, then we'll just get all the nice stuff that they're not gonna like get their shoes and their chocolate milk and all their other crap all over, and then we'll really enjoy it. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But I understand the frustration. Sometimes we just take piles of stuff. We're just like, it's not happening. Just put it in the basement. Just put it in the basement. We'll deal with
right.
it later.
Discard pile. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's awesome. So when did you first get certified as a life coach yourself? How long ago was that?
I got certified in 2013.
Okay. And was
So
that just like the catalyst to everything else that happened from there?
yeah, I mean, so after college, I moved to New York City. I had a bunch of different jobs and I just couldn't find like anything I was in love with. And I knew I needed to do something that was really purpose driven. And
What did you try when you were in New York City?
I worked at a fashion internship, like doing PR. I was working as this woman's executive assistant in like the consulting industry and interfacing with like a lot of pharmaceutical clients and BMW and, kind of big brands. I worked at a startup that sold like online advertising and I learned how to sell, which was really ended up being very, very helpful.
Sure.
But I really jumped around and I really just, I wanted to do something very purposeful. I was also on the junior board at the time for this nonprofit called the Step Up Women's Network. And there was a lot of programming and events, and I really enjoyed doing that. But through that, I met Gabby Bernstein when she was like really starting to do these speaking circuits for her career. And I met her really, early on in her career. And I was really sort of intrigued back then. She was the only example I had of someone who was spiritual but also like cool. And that was just like that was like all the language that I had for it,
Yeah.
And I really admired her career. I knew I wanted to write a book someday, but I wasn't really sure. It didn't seem like an accessible career. Like she felt like a little bit of a celebrity to me, even though she was just getting started out.
Sure.
And so I moved home from New York. I started working for the family business. I started my first company, which was an organic spray tanning business. And I had like a little studio set up in my apartment in DC. And I have all these women coming in and out. And, when you go to get an airbrush spray tan, you're completely naked. So I had like all these women coming in, stripping down. And they were like 15 or 20-minute appointments. But I noticed like they were really like in this tell all mode. So they were like really opening up to me. And what happened was I was in my early 20s, and both my love for personal development and then also like sort of my concern, I remember thinking, all these people are sharing their stories and opening up to me. They're like naked, like it's a very vulnerable situation. And I don't have any training around this, right? Like I was just certified to like do an airbrush spray tan. I wasn't actually certified to talk to people in any way. And I'd gone to Vanderbilt and I majored in human and organizational development and women's studies, but it wasn't like psychology, right? So that's where I started to be like, maybe I should become a coach. I had hired my own coach to help me figure out what was going on, with all my career stuff. I had had a health coach before, so I knew coaching was an industry. I just didn't know that it was something that I could do. So I started exploring it. I remember I went to like an open house for a coach training certification program, and I signed up, and I ended up building my private practice really quickly, and I had a lot of success early on. But that was sort of like what led me to it. And then I think my success in it is what kept me going.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to realize that you wanted to create an entire school and accredited, program?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I feel like so many people, well, a lot of people think about creating their own programs and having coaches work for them, right? And having their own modalities because it's one of the best ways to scale a coaching business.
Sure.
I don't know that I ever really was like, okay, this is the plan. It was sort of something that evolved. So a lot of in that first year of coaching, a lot of my clients started asking me like if how to do what I was doing. And they were these young women in their 20s, early 30s. So, a lot of them were a little bit older than me. Not that that really meant anything except for I wasn't exactly sure how to advise them, right? Because I I wanted to make sure that they really understood what was required in this career path. And I had a great experience in my coach training program. However, the breakdown was that they didn't teach anything about business. And I really had gathered so much information from just being a sponge growing up in a family business.
Yeah.
And then also my time in New York City, and I'd had a lot of internships before my first job while I was in college. And so I had all these different work experiences. And then I had learned sales. I only spent 6 months in this job, but I worked at this startup in New York City and I learned how to sell. And they had a very, very aggressive sales system. And so I took that and I applied it to coaching and I built my own sales system. And so when all these women were coming to me saying like, I want to do something like you, how do I have a career like that? I didn't really have a program to point them to because although the program I went through taught you how to coach, it didn't teach you how to have a coaching business.
Right.
So there was sort of this evolution of like, me trying to solve a problem in the industry. And then I started to hear that from a lot of people. I went through this process before we launched IGC, where I interviewed 20 women who had gone through different coach training programs. So they had gone through accredited programs that, some of them were more niche, like health coaching programs, some of them were generalized coaching.
Right.
And sort of like the complaint across the board was, I know how to coach, but I don't actually know how to sell. I don't know how to have a business. I feel uncomfortable selling my services. And I was like, this is a big gap to close for women, because we need to be able to support ourselves through work that we love, but that means building a business around it.
Yep. That's awesome. So when did you open Inner Glow Circle?
2015.
Okay. So it wasn't that long that you were just coaching or doing your own like private practice before you transitioned into helping other people do it.
Yeah, I was really like digging in, trying to figure out like what the heck is up with this field of work. And then, what's going to be my part in it? What kind of problems can I solve?
Yeah. And I know you said you kind of knew all along that at some point you wanted to write a book, and I have your book here and some bookmarks and things that were of interest to me here to talk about. But what was like the main inspiration? What was like the thing that was like, I've got to write a book?
Well, it was definitely something that like was sort of always in the back of my mind, and I was always taking notes, and I still do this, and sort of putting ideas together. But I would say probably like the life-changing event that said like I definitely have to put this on paper was when my brother passed away. So we started IGC in January of 2015. And just a few months after that, my brother passed away. Like I got a phone call from my other brother, telling me what had happened. And I was in San Francisco at the time, and I flew home as soon as I could. And it was an absolute tragedy, for anyone who's experienced a sudden tragedy like that. It's really truly like the definition of earth shattering. Like I just remember walking back into my apartment and feeling literally like the walls were moving. Like I just didn't have a sense of reality,
Yeah.
because something that it's like, your whole life, this person is there, and then you get a phone call that they're not, and you don't really get to say goodbye. And Bo had struggled with his mental health for sure, but you sort of manage within the struggle, and you never, even if you sort of always expect the other shoe to drop, you also don't expect it to drop. It's sort of a weird thing to describe, but anyway, so I think that was where the way I handled the loss of my brother and the experiences that happened to me in those first few years after his passing, really were what told me that I needed to write this book. And the title, At Least You Look Good, comes from just, it was something that quite a few people had said to me over the years. So I had also been dealing with chronic illness. I had undiagnosed but neurological Lyme disease for 10 years.
It's crazy.
And as you know, where we live, like, so I grew up part of my childhood very close to Theresa, where she lives now. I think it's like 8 minutes. I GPSed it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And there's lots of deer, and there's lots of ticks, and it's a big
pull them
thing.
off our kids like all week long this time of year.
Yeah, it's scary, and at this, this was almost like 15 years ago now, and now people talk about Lyme disease much more openly, but a lot of doctors didn't even really think it was anything significant to treat. They thought it was like a cold.
Right.
And so being sick, and then also the loss of my brother, people would say to me all the time, like, well, at least you look good, or you don't look sick, or And this is a big thing in the chronic illness community. And I know it connects to mental health or other invisible illnesses. Like you talk so much about ADHD, Theresa, like people don't know what we're struggling with. They don't know how our minds work or what's going on in our bodies. And I really wanted to put words to that and try to tell my story the best that I could.
Yeah, we did a beautiful job. I've read a lot of little bits and pieces. As if I don't know if I've mentioned to you before, but I rarely ever actually read a book. I'm like I listen to books like crazy. It's my ADHD thing. But so I'm interested in something if I actually picked up the actual book and read it. So
Aw.
I've been enjoying all the little bits that I've read, and I love all the little like prayers and poems and things that you have in
Yeah.
here. And yeah, I mean, basically to what you were just saying right now, like in on page 122, you talk about how many people feel a disconnect between how they look on the outside and how they feel on the inside. And
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of, what you're talking about there. So the Lyme's disease was resolved through what methods or modalities or time?
Lyme is really controversial. People who haven't lived it, the lucky people who haven't lived it likely don't know this, but it's really controversial and there's a lot of debate between doctors, and the modern medical community will say you can never cure Lyme disease, that it will always be with you. But I found a doctor actually in the area that I grew up in, close to where you live in Annapolis, who was able to cure me. I test negative for Lyme disease now on all my different bands. And I went through a 6-month protocol of high dose. This was all IV, so intravenous, but high dose vitamin C, lipids, and hydrogen peroxide.
Hmm.
And then a pretty rigorous detox protocol. Um, so yeah, I try to tell my story as much as I can. A lot of people will argue with me and say that's not possible, but I have the
I've heard
receipts.
other people say it
So
too, that they've been cured from it, and I think it's totally
yeah,
possible. So I
yeah,
think there's still so much that we're learning about it.
for sure.
But I'm really glad that you were able to get the help that you needed so badly and that you had such a great result from it.
Yeah. I mean, it had a big effect on my mental health too, and I think that's really important. Like a lot of times physical illnesses, especially things that create an autoimmune response, can also really affect our mental health.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you have something underlying, or you have sort of these quirks or tendencies, but never, felt the need to diagnose as anything. And then you get sick, or sometimes it happens to people postpartum, right? Where the body goes through changes or after a big surgery, and in the body's recovery process, certain things can come to the surface.
Absolutely.
And, it's, we have to kind of be our own doctors and our own advocates. It's
Yeah.
wild.
We really do. Nobody else is going to look out for us the way that we can look out for ourselves when we're doing it well. So you wrote the book in what year? What year was that finally came out?
I published at the end of 2020. It took me like 3 years to write it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm in the process of writing mine now, as you know, and hoping that it's going to be out by the end of the summer. And the only way that that's happening is because I have a coach walking me through it, because otherwise, I mean, I've probably been working on it for 3 years also, but never really getting anywhere. But this time it's happening. So I'm very excited about that. Um,
That's amazing.
Thanks. I'm excited
Wait,
about it.
what's the title of your book? Are you sharing?
I believe it's going to be Becoming More Me,
Okay,
just like my
that
business.
fits.
So yeah,
Yeah.
here's the crazy part, and this will just be fun for people to realize when it's a few months from now and the book is out. The first sentence has not been written, and our deadline for first draft is July 10th. So right now it's June 6th.
So the first sentence hasn't been written because you're like doing it in another order, or
It doesn't exist yet. So
okay.
yes, it's an intensive and interesting process that we're going through, but I fully trust it, and it's just wait
Can
and
you share
see.
about your process, or is it under
I'm
wraps?
working with a coach. So I mean, like right now, like we've got the outline and we really understand like who we're talking to and everything else. And we're just kind of like set free on the writing process now. And then we'll go into the draft editing and all the other parts. But she's holding our hand throughout it. So, meeting up twice a week, and I've got great other women in this container. I think for me, working in group is really important because each
Yeah.
step, like nobody's moving ahead without the rest of us, and we'll all launch together. But I mean, the way it's all written out, we'll be launching these books by the end of August. So
That's amazing.
it seems,
I will
I
say,
have this like seesaw of belief and disbelief happening right now. I keep telling my husband, I'm like, the one end, I'm like, hell yeah, it's happening. The other end, I'm like, I have no idea how it's happening, but it'll happen.
yeah, books are really magical. I think there's something that so many people want to write. Like so many people say, I'm going to write a book. And then obviously then there's a smaller group of people who actually write the book. And then there's a smaller people who like edit it or get some sort of involvement so that they
Yeah.
can launch it into the world. And then there's a smaller group that publish. And I think I mean, it sounds like you have a really great supportive network around it. And I do think like accountability is so important.
It's the only thing that's going to make it happen for me.
Yeah,
I can see
otherwise you really
that.
get lost in your head because you have to be in your head so much as a writer. And
Yeah.
if you don't have like participation in around the book, it's like I think that's what starts to bring the book to life is the
Yeah.
accountability and the participation and the workshopping.
I get like really excited about things that are currently happening in my life too. And that's been a drawback because I always feel like, oh, I really want to talk about what's going on right now. But what I know people need to hear at least first, and there can be more than one book, Theresa. I keep telling myself, like, just put it on the back burner. It's the next book. But it's like
Hmm.
what I really need to start with is like what was happening longer ago in the past and bring people forward to that stuff. And also sometimes the things that are happening currently feel a little bit too raw or vulnerable to share presently, but it's not as difficult to share them 5 years down the road. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll all come. But yeah, I'm
Revisiting the past is a whole thing too. Like sometimes that's hard because I don't know how what your experience has been like, but for me, like revisiting the past, I started to like dream about the past a lot again. Like it was very like that's sort of where I was living. Writing a memoir is really unique, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm guessing your sort of self-help memoir. Is that
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of my
yeah,
own story, the modalities that I use, the
yeah.
transformational process, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up for me too. But I think part of the reason I also wanted to write the book was for that. Like,
Right. To like actually catalog it and like
yeah.
sort of continue processing it.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about your theory, your melts theory. I thought that was really
Yeah.
cool. I think that
Yeah.
would be a neat thing to talk about before we start wrapping
Yeah.
things up.
I love talking about that. So MELT is my resource model, and it stands for money, energy, love, time, and space. Money, energy, love, time, and space. And you can utilize this a lot of different ways. One is going through each resource, right? So a lot of times, and I teach this to clients, it's also helpful for clients to use with their clients. But a lot of times, we want something in our lives and we're like, well, I want that thing, but I don't have enough time or I don't have enough money, or I don't have enough spaciousness in my home or on my calendar, or, I feel this deficit of love or whatever, right? So everything is input, output. And sometimes what happens is we use one resource to get another resource in exchange. So the easiest one is like we can use money sometimes to buy time,
Sure.
right? Or sometimes we don't have money, but we can invest our time and work on something and then get money in return. So it's really this fun way to sort of manipulate, I don't love that word, but like utilize your resources and move them around so that when you feel that you're in debt, quote unquote, in
Mhm.
one area, you can start to use another resource that you have a quote unquote profit in and then start to build from there. So if I feel like I'm in debt financially, like I need money, you don't have to actually have credit card debt. It's just like where you kind of see the levels
Sure.
in that moment, right? But let's say I have a lot of extra time on my hands, or I have a lot of spaciousness in my schedule, then I can use those other resources, time and space, to convert them into money. So it's this way to work with our resources to actually create the thing that we feel like we're missing in the moment.
I love that. That's really cool. Um, Tell me a little bit about the inner glow circle and how that works and how people can work with you.
Yeah. So IGCs has a lot of different courses. Like right now we have a spiritual NLP certification course. We have something called Six Figure Sales, which is a sales course. Those are both live courses. We have a ton of digital courses on sales, on confidence, on uh, like our like our version of your business MBA as a
Nice.
coach or a solopreneur. That's called Glow CEO. But our premier offering is our coach training certification program. So it's a 6-month certification program. We are accredited by the ICF. So you can do the IGC only path and just get your IGC certification, or you can also do the ICF path, which includes mentor coaching, which the ICF requires for you to become a certified coach. And
So for those
it's a
people who have
really
already
well,
gotten a certification that didn't have the business building support, they can come to you for just that part of it.
yeah, you can do it that way. And we do have people go through our course as a second and sometimes third program.
Okay.
So, for people, let's say, for someone who's gone through a like nutrition school, who's learned like nutrition coaching,
Hmm.
but they didn't deep dive into coaching technique and they didn't deep dive into the business of coaching. So they leave not knowing how to sell, not really fully understanding how to market. Like
Right.
maybe, okay, they're like, okay, I need to post on Instagram, but like what happens after that, right? How do I actually get consultations on my schedule and then convert them to monthly paying clients?
Right.
That's about half of what we teach in the course. And then the other half is refining and sharpening your coaching technique so that your coaching is really effective and transformative. I think a lot of coaching schools out there and even coaches, like what they're doing is not really coaching. If you really look at the definition of coaching and understand how the ICF defines coaching, it's more like
Right.
consulting. So a lot of times our students are unlearning and we're having to kind of reintroduce them to what coaching is from our lens and then reteach them how to coach. And you can do both, right? We have people come from big consulting careers who want to start to do some coaching and they want to marry those things together. Like you can coach and
Right.
consult side by side, but in my opinion, you want to distinguish with the client and for yourself when you're in each modality.
Yeah. The outcome's going to be way different depending on what
Right.
you're getting into. That's for sure. That's awesome. I love that distinction. And I think that is something that happens a lot, the consulting versus the coaching. Um, with
We're starting to have a lot of therapists and social workers come through our program too, because
Nice.
they want to coach, right? And some people would say, like, it's so easy to become a coach. It's so hard to become a social worker or, a LCPC or whatever.
Yeah.
But coaching is a different modality, and even though it doesn't have the regulation of the therapeutic model, it is still a different and unique model, and there's a lot that clinicians can't do that they can do as coaches, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't connect with your clients on social media. You can't share client testimonials. And so a lot of people are finding that coaching opens up a lot of doors for them. And they also don't have to run through insurance, right? They can run their own business, they can
Right.
make more money. So that's a big deal too.
It really is. I'd have a hard time being anything but a coach sort of therapist because I like being close to my clients and being able to, yeah, have that kind of a relationship. To each his own. But
Yeah,
I
right,
really,
exactly.
yeah, I appreciate what you do and the way that you do it and the way that you've kind of found those gaps and found really beautiful ways to fill them and to help women rise through that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Where is the best place for people to find you, Katie?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. Our company is at Inner Glow Circle, and then my personal account is at it's Katie DePaola. And connect with me, drop me a DM, and I'd love to support you however I can on your journey.
Yeah, awesome. I'll make sure those handles are on the show notes. And just thank you so much for your time today and for coming and sharing so much with all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Theresa. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for spending some of your precious time with me today. If you loved this episode, please leave a review or simply share it with someone else who would get great benefit from it too. If you share on social media, please tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And if your inner critic is still trying to argue with those facts, hit me up. We've got work to do.